Let's get one thing straight. The war between Iran and Israel may look like a fight over religion, ethnicity, and sovereignty, but beneath the surface, it's something far more systemic. It's the visible spark of a much bigger fire, a slow-motion crisis unraveling the petrodollar system, and with it, the foundations of American global dominance. Now, most people think the term petrodollar just means you have to use dollars to buy oil. That's not wrong, but it's also not the full picture. The petrodollar isn't a rule, it's a closed-loop economic ecosystem. And to understand why that system is starting to fall apart, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a wildly profitable company called Saudi Oil Inc. Their business model? Dig oil, sell oil, swim in money. But here's the clever bit. They struck a deal with the world's biggest money printer, the United States. The agreement was simple. Buy my oil, but only pay in US dollars. America, of course, was thrilled. Deal. I'll even protect you if things get messy. And just like that, a global oil dollar loop was born. Countries all over the world scrambled to earn dollars just so they could buy oil. How do you earn dollars? Easy. Export to the US. Think Japan, South Korea, or even China. But what about countries that can't earn enough dollars? Say Sri Lanka. Well, they just have to borrow, usually from the IMF or World Bank. Every barrel of oil purchased meant demand for dollars. That demand made the dollar the undisputed global reserve currency. Meanwhile, Saudi Oil Inc. was raking in so much cash they couldn't even spend it fast enough. After the 1970s oil crisis, when prices jumped from $3 to $40 a barrel, they were essentially printing money faster than the Fed. But then came a new problem. What do you do with too many dollars? First, the US had a great idea. Why not buy our government bonds? Safe, stable, pays interest. So Saudi oil revenue went right back into US treasuries, funding America's massive spending. Second, the Saudis went on a shopping spree. American planes, rare weapons, US tech. Think Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. The money circled right back to the West's military-industrial complex. In fact, early on, most of the investment decisions were made by the Saudi central bank, which simply parked cash in Citibank or JP Morgan accounts. Iran, under the Shah, did the same thing. Sold oil, made dollars, and deposited them in New York banks. This was the first wave of petrodollar recycling. But like any rich business, Saudi Arabia eventually hired smarter people. They created a sovereign wealth fund. The royal family decided, no more mattress saving. We want Wall Street-style capitalism. So they started behaving like global investors. Not political, just profitable. And that changed everything. No longer obsessed with US treasuries, these funds dove headfirst into Wall Street stocks, commercial real estate, hedge funds, derivatives, and tech startups, from New York to Shanghai, Dubai to Berlin. This wasn't just about oil anymore. This was about return on investment. The petrodollar had become a beast of capital, and like any beast, it could distort the entire ecosystem. Just imagine global finance as a serene lake. The petrodollar monster is like a massive pump, dumping tons of water into the system and sucking it back out. Liquidity surged, asset prices inflated, and eventually something snapped. During the 2008 financial crisis, economists traced some of the excessive risk-taking back to irrational investment behavior from oil-rich sovereign funds. Yes, the very same countries that once stabilized the dollar ended up destabilizing it. Naturally, everyone else saw this playbook and wanted in. Now everyone has a sovereign wealth fund, from Qatar to Norway. But the US started to worry. The flow of oil money, once guaranteed to return home via treasury bonds, was becoming erratic. And then came 2022. Something subtle but seismic began to shift. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE began quietly selling US debt. Japan, once America's most loyal bondholder, backed off too. The pipeline of global demand for US treasuries, the very lifeline of American deficit spending, was starting to dry up. Meanwhile, the petrodollar monopoly started to crack. Russia began selling oil in rubles. Iran accepted Chinese yuan. Even some Gulf states signaled willingness to trade oil for currencies other than the dollar. That's Washington's worst nightmare. The hardwired rule of buy oil in dollars or don't buy at all was eroding. And when the petrodollar's foundation shakes, the entire global financial structure wobbles. So what does America do when it feels cornered? It fights. Or at least, it lets its friends fight. Enter Israel. Israel isn't just targeting Iranian militias or rogue proxies. This is about sending a message. Don't you dare threaten the dollar's grip on global oil. Iran is central to this resistance network. It's selling oil outside the dollar system. It's building ties with China, Russia, and other non-dollar energy corridors. But this time, the shock and awe playbook didn't quite work. Back in 2006, when Israel invaded Lebanon, the dollar jumped over 2% in just 1 week. Why? Investors panic bought the dollar as a safe haven. But fast forward to now, despite rising tensions and open threats of retaliation from Iran, the dollar barely moved. Gold spiked, oil surged, but the dollar? Down nearly 10% this year. It seems the world is no longer reflexively running to the dollar for safety. The old dollar smile theory, where the dollar strengthens in both global downturns and US boom cycles, is starting to fall apart. The left side of that smile? It's paralyzed. And here's the kicker. Part of this is self-inflicted. Years of erratic monetary policy, ballooning fiscal deficits, and the rise of Trump-era protectionism have made investors question whether the U.S. is still the adult in the room or just another big kid with a printing press. Today, America's dollar is no longer untouchable, and its wars are no longer guaranteed to strengthen it. Which brings us to the unspoken strategy. War becomes not just a geopolitical tool, but a financial reset mechanism. You don't need to win the war. You just need to force the capital to run home. But what happens when the capital doesn't come back? That's the terrifying part. So here we are, a world where oil is no longer strictly tied to dollars, sovereign wealth funds are diversifying away from U.S. assets, and even Middle Eastern allies are hedging their bets. The U.S.-Israel pressure on Iran may be framed as anti-terrorism, non-proliferation, or regional stability. But behind the curtain, it's about maintaining a financial order that's showing visible cracks. The petrodollar loop is no longer tight. The Wall Street monster born from recycled oil wealth now has its own mind. And the global flight for safety, it may no longer have a single destination.